This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Hello, and welcome to The Best Worst, a celebration of the best and worst of the television we love. This show is hosted by two separate but equally important hosts, Joseph, who investigates the TV shows, and Meg, who prosecutes the offenders. These are their stories.
We made this show because we wanted to explore TV, and I think it's really interesting when a TV show runs really long, like this one did, like really long, to look at both when it's working at its best, but also, the day where everyone tried their hardest and it just didn't work very well. That's why we watch the IMDb viewer best rated and worst rated episodes of a quintessential series. Meg, what's the series we're doing today?
The series we're doing today, if you didn't catch it from my hilarious intro, it's Law and Order.
Law and Order, created by the one and only Dick Wolf.
Dick Wolf.
Yeah, he created the show and that was his ticket. He's written that ticket for the rest of his career.
He has made a lot of hay while that sun is shining.
I do think he's also the guy who did he does all the Chicago ones.
Yes.
Chicago Fire, Chicago Medical. He's real good he comes up with a very simple concept and then doesn't do anything else. And that's Dick Wolf.
Listen, what we always used to say when watching the show as a child was Dick Wolf before he dicks you. So.
All right. We didn't do these statistics, so I'll do them.
Get those stats in. The police are very concerned with stats. If I learned anything from watching The Wire.
Law and Order, which is still running today. They had an episode this week, I believe. It's in its 24th season, has been running since 1990. There was a 12-year gap where it was canceled, and we'll talk about that in a moment when we discuss how we picked our worst episode. But it has 525 episodes, which is almost twice as many episodes as the previous longest show we watched, Cheers, that had 270 episodes. It's a lot of episodes of television.
It is. It's quite a lot of episodes of television. It's like has been a make work for the acting population of New York City for years.
Yeah, they film it on location in New York, and it's sort of this running joke almost that if you go see theater in New York, every single person in a playbill will list on their credits Law and Order because they have all, at some point, been a witness or a dead body. I had never, so full disclosure getting into this, I had never seen a single episode of Law and Order, and I understand a lot better now why they need so many people, and it's not just because they run long, it's also the nature of the show just runs through guest actors so quickly.
Big casts, lots of bit parts, many a bit part.
I have no nostalgia for this. I've never seen it. My expectations it seemed kind of boring to me. It's that whole ripped from the headlines procedural it's just not my cup of tea. But you watched this growing up.
I watched this growing up. I loved this show. My family loved this show. My parents are both lawyers. So that was like a little connection we had to it, was that they like kind of always, knew what was going on in these courthouse scenes, which was cool. And yeah, I loved watching it as a kid. I loved the acting. I loved the performances. I love solving things and mysteries, and I feel like a lot of my brain development in terms of process and solving problems comes from watching many episodes of Law and Order.
Wow. Big statement.
Yeah, whenever we're watching a TV show, I'm always like, this person did it, or she's going to get pregnant, or this is going to happen. And you're always like, how do you know that? And I'm like, it's because I watched a bajillion episodes of Law and Order. So
Meg, you have to silence that cell phone.
We can never silence our cell phones because we have both a daughter who's at school and a dog who's at the vet because she ate a fridge magnet. So,
and we're also dealing with some business stuff. It's just, guys, it's been a morning, but we're here.
You know who was also dealing with some business stuff? NBC in 1990 when they decided to put Law and Order on the air. Yeah, so we could talk about Dick Wolf deciding to make this show.
This is where I investigated by reading the Wikipedia page for Law and Order. Dick Wolf, back in the late 80s, because this premiered in 1990, so this would have been 88, 89, went to Universal with the concept for a procedural that was half cop show, half courtroom show. And the president of Universal was like, that sounds great. There was already a show exactly like that. And there was. It was in the 60s. It was called Arrest and Trial. And so he was like, let's watch it and see if there's anything we can take from it. And they watched it, and how Arrest and Trial worked is instead of the prosecutors, it was the defense. So you get the police investigation, and then you get the people defending the people they arrested, which honestly seems like a much more interesting way to structure a show to me. And in the episode they watched, they arrested someone for theft, and then the lawyer proved that they didn't do it. So the police had gotten the wrong person. And Dick Wolf was like, great, I love that. I'm going to take that. And so he decided one of his mandate is that the police were going to get things wrong sometimes and that like they were going to be fallible. But Dick Wolf is a very pro cop. And so he didn't want to write for defense attorneys. He wanted it to be the prosecution.
Yes. And so this show actually bounced around a little bit in its beginning. Fox ordered 13 episodes based on just the concept with no pilot. And then the network head reversed the decision. He was like, this isn't a Fox show. And then Wolf went to CBS, who ordered a pilot. And then they didn't pick it up. And then they went to NBC, our buddies NBC, Brandon Tartikoff and Warren Littlefield. They screened the pilot in summer of '89. And they were like, this is very intense for a TV show. Are we going to do this every week? But they decided that they could go forward with it. And Brandon Tartikoff, who we've talked about before, he was the network head who revitalized NBC and brought it back to life and ushered in the era of must-see TV, just building up the network with shows like Fresh Prince and then ultimately on to Seinfeld and on into the NBC that we know today.
Can you imagine being one of the executives who turned down Law & Order, as close to a money printing machine as TV has ever made?
Yeah, because it's not a quote-unquote Fox show. Which I guess maybe it's not. So, yeah.
Just that has to haunt you. Like, listen, turning down The Simpsons, for instance, would be bad, but at least there isn't like 4 other Simpsons TV shows that are equally as successful.
Yeah, I mean, Law & Order has 24 seasons. It's second only to its spin-off Law & Order Special Victims Unit, which is the longest-running live-action scripted American primetime series ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Law & Order is a dynasty. And maybe one day we'll cover SVU.
I think we will. We've talked about... This is something we've talked about, is the idea of doing a run of only spin-offs, because the number of spin-offs that have hit the 100 episode mark that we require is surprisingly large. There's at least one show, the one with Archie Bunker, All in the Family.
Yeah.
All in the Family, I think, had 4 separate spin-offs that all hit 100 episodes. We could do kind of an interesting run of just very successful spin-offs. And maybe we will. But let's get to the worst out of 525 episodes. Meg, what is the worst episode Law & Order ever made, according to IMDb?
IMDb says that the worst episode was season 12, episode 8, The Fire This Time.
And I want to get briefly into how we chose this. I will say many of the modern Law & Orders are rated less than this. They seem to be pretty unpopular. But we made the decision that if a show gets canceled for 12 years and then comes back with an entirely different cast, I'm not sure it's the same show, and it didn't seem fair to just pick something with this new cast that was made last year that people just don't like because it's new cast. And so we chose the lowest rated of pre the first cancellation, is how we came to season 12 episode The Fire This Time.
Yeah, and I think there was definitely bias on my part because I was like, I don't want to watch anything new. Like, I have so much nostalgia for the old episodes. I definitely wanted to see my old pals. So that was also peppered our decision there. The title of this episode is borrowing from the James Baldwin book, The Fire Next Time, which is just an interesting pull in titling your episode.
Yeah. Have you read The Fire Next Time?
I have not.
I did. I think we own it, I want to say. I think back when Ta-Nehisi Coates did a book that made him famous that I'm blanking.
Between the World and Me?
Between the World and Me.
I read that one.
He, I think, specifically said he based it on The Fire Next Time, and so I got The Fire Next Time and read it. I might have gotten it from the library. I don't know if we own it. It's a really beautiful book. I remember almost nothing about it other than it's like some very beautiful writing that had absolutely nothing to do
with this episode. And I find it like even a little bit offensive.
Oh, yeah.
That's hard. Anyway, so The Fire This Time, this episode, let's talk about it. Do you want to bump into that brief summary, or would you like me to summarize it?
I think I can summarize
it. Here goes.
This show is almost unwatchably fast-paced for me, so I'm going to miss some steps here because the show just moves so quickly. Basically, there is a fire in an apartment building. A young woman is found dead, naked, but not assaulted, but died in the fire. She was a teacher, and they suspect a parent who was maybe having an affair with her. It turns out he was having an affair with her at that apartment building, but he didn't set the fire. He just ran when he saw the fire and left her to burn. So he's a bad guy, but not the one who set the fire. It turns out the fire was set by a radical environmentalist group. They are protesting the fact that the apartment building was built on top of a community garden. And then we get a lot of stuff about how environmentalists are bad, and that...
Yeah, I can see why this was rated so poorly. And I think that's just...
It's a very right-wing episode.
It's a very right-wing episode, and it's a very much like, oh, you greenies, you freaking nerds. Can't you tell we need to make money on real estate? And like, well, there is a nuanced conversation to be had about community spaces and third spaces and access to affordable housing in large cities. This was not the conversation that was being had.
No, it kind of pretends that it's trying to have that conversation, but it's just so clearly right-wing. One thing to keep in mind, now this would have been written and filmed before it happened. I think it would have to have been. But this came out less than a month after 9/11. This was October 2001 is when this episode came out. So we're at like the beginning of prime Bush era right-wingers, where it's just sort of kind of similar today, but different vibes. Very similar of just like the culture got taken over by the right wing in a way that's sort of unimaginable, I think, for people who weren't there to see it. So this is right there at the beginning of that. I maybe missed some stuff in my summary. I did. I think the guy goes to jail, right?
There was a guy who works at the grocery store who ultimately murked on the people who did it. But the thought was that there was like some sort of mastermind guy who was controlling these young college kids.
That's right. There was like a cult leader, upstate guy who's like a cult leader environmentalist who was like very coded evil cult leader who like had manipulated them into setting the fire, but got away clean because he had no evidence against him. There was also another very right-wing note here is that the lawyer for the environmentalists is coded as evil just for defending them.
Yeah.
And he was based on a real guy named William Kunstler, who was like kind of a radical lawyer who...
You don't have to bleep that. It's okay. It's his actual name.
Also, you don't have to bleep cunt. You can just... William Kunstler was sort of a radical lawyer who defended a lot of leftist groups. So they based this lawyer on him as like... What kind of horrible lawyer would defend a plaintiff they didn't 100% agree with, even though, of course, that is how our law system is supposed to work. But why would Law and Order know that? As you can tell, I didn't love this show.
Joseph didn't love it. Didn't love it.
I mentioned this at the top of my summary, but the big one for me, and this is why this is going to be a very interesting episode of The Middleist. I highly encourage you to join our Patreon to hear it, because I think The Middleist fixes many of the problems I had with the first two. But both the worst and the best here are so fast-paced that I just really had trouble with it. Like, every scene is less than a minute long and is just long enough for whatever... There's so many guest stars. I see why every actor was in it, because it's just like, and here's the owner of a florist shop, and the florist shop is like, no, I didn't do it, but I saw him talking to this guy. And now we get 30 seconds with that guy where he's like, I heard him having a phone call with this guy. And it just moves so fast, and it never stops. The entire episode is like that. These like 30-second bursts of scenes that with no character building at all. I didn't learn anything at all about the police officers. I didn't learn anything about the lawyers. I barely learned anything about the plaintiffs or the victim. It was really the pace was it for me.
The pace works for me because I also want to know who done it. And so I'm like, let's get there as quick as possible. Let's talk to all of these people and figure it out. So I really like it. I also connected. Because I watched so much of the show, I have more knowledge about the characters, because while this show is, I wouldn't call the show character driven. It's definitely a plot driven show. We do get little sprinklings of character over the years and over time. I also just love Jerry Orbach, who plays Detective Lenny Briscoe. I'm like a Lenny Briscoe, Jerry Orbach stan. So I love getting to watch him work. And then I'm trying to remember this episode, he was with Jesse Martin, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing, is like the supporting cast outside of Jerry Orbach and Sam Waterston were completely different all 3 episodes. And so it was just really hard for me to like hang my hat on anyone.
Well, there's the lieutenant. She was in a bunch of the show. She was in seasons 4 through 20.
Okay.
So yes, she was in it. Jerry Orbach was in it for a while. It started out with a whole different cast. There was a kind of seasons 1 through 4 was a completely different cast. And then there was like a big shakeup. Chris Noth was on it, who played Mr. Big on Sex and the City. He did 111 episodes of the show, and I don't think about it at all because I think in my mind it's Jerry Orbach and Benjamin Bratt who are my detectives. So
Benjamin Bratt is the younger one
who is in the Middleist episode.
Okay, great.
Yes.
But he is not in this one, I don't think.
No, he's not. No, it's I'm pretty sure it's Jesse Martin who's in this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, especially in this one, the police make so little impression on camera. If you don't already know who these people are, you learn nothing about them. You do not, and I don't mean like you don't learn like their backstories. I mean, you just don't learn their personalities at all. You really get no sense of who they are. It's just a series of watching them ask factual questions. I wanted to call out briefly the guy who I think ends up turning and testifying against the other arsonist, a guy named Kent Quigley, is played by an actor named Jeff Edgerton. And Jeff had a few minor Broadway credits in the 90s. He was in Grease and Parade. And then he did 2 Law & Order episodes playing 2 different people. And then he has never worked since. And so, I thought he did a good job. He had a dream. He followed that dream as far as Law & Order and then presumably did something else with his life.
We don't know that he's never worked since. He might be having a robust community theater career. He could be teaching. You don't know.
I don't know. I didn't want to stalk Jeff Edgerton.
Jeff Edgerton, if you're listening, we're really rooting for you.
I thought you did a good job.
Yeah.
I thought they did the right thing casting you. I'm sorry you were in the worst episode of Law & Order ever made, but I don't think it was because of you.
It wasn't because of you. It was, yes, definitely because of this right-wing, let's hate on the environmentalists weirdness. And then there's the Jack McCoy's conversation about who should be are you liable for influencing others to do things? Does that make you?
Yeah, because they're trying to figure out how to charge the guy upstate who, as far as I know, didn't even tell them to do this specific act. He just encourages people to take action in a general way. And so they're trying to figure out how to make that illegal.
Yeah.
If you weren't so used to it, if it hasn't become such a standard way to run one of these shows, it is kind of fascinating that the cast of main characters just completely changes halfway through.
Yeah.
And very suddenly. It's not like there's it's not like we zoom in on the courthouse so we know that we're in the courthouse half. It's just from one scene to the next, suddenly the cops are no longer in it for the entire rest of the episode.
They occasionally will have a little passing of the football between each other or coming back to get more information. But yeah, I mean, it's Law and Order, babe.
Yeah, it's just, it is, listen, credit to Nicholas Wolf that it's a pretty radical way of writing a TV episode if it hadn't become now so standardized.
This episode was written by David Black, who is mostly a journalist who's written episodes of television, but a lot of what David Black does is being a journalist, a biographer, novelist, investigative journalism. His investigative journalism has been in the New York Times Magazine, New York and Harper's, and a bunch of other periodicals. So that's where he's a real, if you're going to write a right from the headlines story, then he's a guy who's also writing the headlines. So.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who writes TV. I actually did not get the journalism stuff. I just got that he started on Hill Street Blues in 1986.
Also where Dick Wolf started.
And he worked all the way to his last credit is 2012 on Blue Blood. So he kind of wrote cop shows is what he did.
Yeah.
Also, as a note, in 1994, he wrote a TV movie called The Cosby Mysteries in which Bill Cosby solves crimes.
Okay.
And that's a thing that David Black did. This episode was directed.
You got to write what you know. You got to act what you know. Is it really acting?
It was directed by David Platt, who spent the first 15 years or so of his career as a boom operator. His first job was boom operator on Friday the 13th Part 2, which people who have seen the movie Scream will know, or I guess people who have seen the Friday the 13th movies will know, is the one that actually introduces the famous Jason with the hockey mask. He was not in the first one, and so our director of this episode was standing there just off shot while Jason was marching around with his boom. And then after 15 years, he moved to sound mixing with Sex and the City in 1998, and then finally directed for the first time, or at least credited for directing for the first time in 2001, which is right around when this episode came out. So this was one of his first directing jobs, even though he had been in the industry since the late 70s.
And he ultimately went on to direct a ton of Law and Order episodes and a ton of SVU episodes. He also directed an episode of The Wire, which is a good cop show.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, I know that all cop shows are bastards, but
yeah,
The Wire is a good apple.
I also think Law and Order is good. I enjoy the watching of Law and Order. as much as this episode I thought was like kind of cringy, I enjoyed watching it.
I do think it is, though, it is the epitome of propaganda.
Absolutely. Let's get to our controversy section, which we do in the worst episode. This is Law and Order is straight up propaganda. SVU is straight up propaganda. It really does influence people, specifically American people, to believe that the cops will help you, that the cops are good at their jobs,
That the cops care at all.
that the cops care at all.
Yeah, the cops in here, especially, we'll get to this in the middle list, but they just like, on the flimsiest of leads, are like, there's something wrong here. I must fix this situation, or going all over the city. Whereas, like, in real life, you can be like, someone stabbed me. I have a photo of them. And they'll be like, what do you want us to do?
And also these cops, these are detectives. They're in suits and ties. They're treating people with courtesy. They're doing detective work at a fast pace with care, concern. I mean, yes, there's definitely some, like, there's misogyny, there's brusqueness, there's racism. It's all there, but it is like really polished up and Dick Wolf sanitized for television.
These are flawed people on a righteous mission.
Yes.
Is very clearly how they're written. And same with the prosecutors. The prosecutors are very much written as like, they're trying their best to do justice for the city.
Yeah, it's very polished. It's very professional.
Though there is, and this might be the writers coming in, because I don't know if all the writers, I imagine somebody who like covered cops as a journalist might know some stuff about how cops actually work. And so you get stuff like, I mean, this is right after 9/11, and there's people making cracks about Giuliani. There's people like speaking negatively of mass surveillance. There is in the dialogue some surprisingly lefty stuff, even though the overall message is very right wing. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's the episode writers getting to sneak in a little bit of the other side of things.
It also could be network too.
Yeah. The last note I have for this is at one point they're in a police interrogation and the lawyer's like, I want to go off record. Is that a thing? Like in journalism, you can go off record in an interview. Can you go off record while being interrogated by the cops and just be like, off record, I did it?
I wouldn't trust the cops, but who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Cops kill, cops lie.
Anything else on A Fire This Time? The worst episode of Law and Order.
I don't think it's the worst episode in terms of direction or writing or performance. I think it is just the content that is so just annoyingly annoying and poorly done. So I think that is what is contributing to that rating. I don't think it's anything necessarily to do with the craft.
I also think I do wonder if stuff like having cracks about Giuliani and mass surveillance right after 9/11 might have contributed to it, because I do think that would, at that time, people would get annoyed by that, being like, we're standing with America's mayor. How dare you? And now let's get to our intermission, which is, how is that theme song?
I love this theme song.
Speak more on that.
I love again, it's that like I Love Lucy connection to it, where it's like, I find it iconic. I like the style of it. It's jazzy. If you like, hopefully my mind will stay this fresh forever. But if you're like, hey, at any point in time said to me, hum the Law and Order theme song, I could do it. I like it. I'm into it.
You pointed out to me as we were watching that it changes style.
Yes, it does. There's a different style for the cops in the credit sequence than there is for the lawyers.
We start the credits with the cops with one set of kind of tone to the music, and then halfway through we switch to the courthouse, at which point we bring in a clarinet, because clarinets are, of course, associated with lawyers. I didn't like this theme song very much. I have no nostalgia associated with it, and I don't find it that interesting as a piece of music. I would rate this one as a 4 out of 10.
I love the soundtrack of the show. I think it's great.
The theme song was written by Mike Post, who is basically a professional theme song writer. He wrote the theme song for The A-Team, Quantum Leap, Magnum P.I., Hill Street Blues. For a long time, he was kind of the go-to theme song guy.
A job that no longer exists.
A job that no longer exists. He also made the dun-dun sound. That was him.
It's great sound.
It's a layer of several different sounds. I could not get information on the other sounds, but one of them is a recording of 500 people walking on a hardwood floor.
I love that. It's weird and great. And it's been in 500 bajillion episodes of television.
He altered it slightly for other Law and Orders, because there was, along with SVU, there was a Law and Order UK that was attempted but didn't go great, and then another one that I'm forgetting.
There was Law and Order LA.
Okay.
There was Law and Order Criminal Intent. There's been a bajillion Law and Orders.
Mike Post, along with his TV theme song work, produced one Dolly Parton album and one Van Halen album, meaning the guy who created the dun-dun sound is also the guy who produced Working 9 to 5, what a wound, da, 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 da. That was same guy. Let's hear it from Mike Post.
He'll fix it in post.
Fix it in Mike Post. Let's get now to the best episode of Law & Order out of 525 episodes. Wow, this one has to be very good. Meg, tell us about it.
Season 6, episode 21, Pro Se.
Tell us about Pro Se.
Okay, so Pro Se starts out with just like two ladies on the street being like New York 90s ladies.
There's a nice little, they're having like a philosophical discussion. I don't remember what about, but it's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah. And it's two girls on their lunch break. Then the girl goes back to work and discovers that people have been brutally stabbed and are dead at the vintage store that she works at. So the cops come and they figure out that this person was stabbed. They were stabbed with like a saber. At first, they, of course, try to blame some black teens for this. And the black teens are like, we did not murder 4 people. We're like regular high school kids. Please leave us the hell alone.
Especially with like a sword.
Like, we're regular high school kids. Please leave us the hell alone. So they get past the red herring of course, like racism, and then go to the other. If it's not a black person, then it's, of course, a what person, Joseph?
It's a homeless person.
There you go. So they go and they find a homeless person who had been stalking women in the area. And then after, shaking down a bunch of people, they figure out where to find this guy. They find him in the library. They realize that he's schizophrenic. They get him processed. And when they're getting him processed, they realize that this guy had been in their custody before for stalking a woman. And the district attorney's office made a deal and let him go. And so that is the sort of big to-do of this episode, is that they let this guy go. He got out, stopped taking his meds again, and then killed a bunch more people. And then this guy gets back on his meds, and we find out that he is like a Ivy League trained lawyer.
A good lawyer. Like, people who have worked with him have said he's very good.
Took the same New York bar exam as the district attorneys are prosecuting him. So yeah, he cannot practice law, of course, because he is schizophrenic and refuses to take his medication and has trouble taking his medication. So he has decided to represent himself. The district attorney is like, you cannot do that. It is not right for you to be able to represent yourself. You're obviously mentally unwell. They eventually let him do it. There's a back and forth. They try to make a deal with him. He won't make a deal. His sister comes in and is like, you shouldn't be on the street. Like, you should make a deal. And he makes a deal, but ultimately, while he was making the deal, he went off his medication again. If this sounds long and complicated, it's because it is. There is a lot of back and forth, and it is long and complicated.
Yeah, I found this to be almost as bad as the worst episode, personally. It again is the pace. It's very fast-paced. It's, again, a very right-wing message, because ultimately it's about how the prosecutors are just not tough enough on crime, and so more crime happens, and it's their fault for not being tough enough on crime. And it's like the one character beat really is that the lady lawyer who is, I'm pretty sure, I mean, she has a character name, I'm sure. I don't think they ever...
Assistant District Attorney Claire Kincaid. Put some respect on her, please.
They never say her name in the episode.
They call her Claire. Yeah, they call her Claire a bunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did not hear her being... I was listening for it, and I did not hear them say her name once.
No, they call her Claire. Yeah.
She just feels very guilty for having not seen the future that he was going to murder someone. And, yeah, it's a very right-wing episode. Once again. And it's still just, every scene gives him exactly one piece of the case and sends him to the next one, and we get these, 30-second scenes kind of blasted at us for 45 minutes.
The schizophrenic lawyer is brilliantly played by Dennis O'Hare.
Dennis O'Hare, who weirdly played a different character in a season 8 episode, who also defended himself.
So they have their stable of actors. And it's also, there's Marianne Plunkett is in this episode, who we love from New York City Stage, from seeing her in The Public, in Richard Nielsen Plays. We've seen her a bunch on stage, and she's incredible. And it was cool to see her earlier in her career playing one of the victims of Dennis O'Hare in this episode. She was the survivor of this.
Yeah, it took a bit because she was under bandages and then under a lot of wound makeup for a bit.
And a lot of acting.
A lot of acting happening. So it took a bit to even recognize.
We saw her in the credits. I was like, oh, Marianne Plunkett's in this. And we're like, who is she? And then we figured it out well into the episode.
There's a scene where they are interrogating a nurse, I think it is, at a hospital, who just is happily giving them his entire medical history. And fun fact, this episode came out the year HIPAA passed.
Yeah, there is a part where they're just like, fully just like rattling. No, it's the pharmacist. They're talking to the pharmacist and they're like, who's this guy? They're like, well, this is this guy. This is his address. This is the medicine he takes. This is when he picks it up. Like just all sorts of like.
So yeah, I mean, when they filmed that, HIPAA didn't exist probably. So.
And this is the reason HIPAA exists.
Exactly.
This episode. Someone was like watching that and they're like, should that be okay?
I thought Claire, which is kind of close to the person I thought she sounded almost identical to Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. She had a very like Jodie Foster voice happening. That's all I had on that.
That's all you had on that. Yeah, there was a lot of she got sued by the victims because she made the deal and let him go the first time. Basically, this episode was highlighting the fallibility of the criminal justice system.
For not being tough enough on crime.
Particularly, not being tough enough on crime and letting a woman be a district attorney.
Yeah. Guys, this is a very right-wing show. There's a little mini action scene at the library, which is fun. They catch him in the library and they like have to chase him around. And it's just like people running around a library. But it was just nice to see the show stop for like a full 2 minutes and have something happen. I enjoyed the little chase through the library. We didn't talk about this, but like Law and Order is famously all about being ripped from the headlines. A lot of episodes are based on real people. This episode was based on a few different cases. I thought it might be based on a guy named Michael Lauder, who his childhood friend wrote a memoir about him called The Best Minds recently. And it's a beautiful book. Michael Lauder was a guy who was very promising in the Ivy Leagues, went to law school, but while at law school, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia, struggled with it for years, but he managed to graduate. I don't remember whether it was Harvard or Yale, but an Ivy League law school, and get into the business, and then tragically killed his pregnant fiancée while on a break from reality and has been under care ever since. And so this seemed like it might be based on that, but weirdly, all of that happened 2 years after this episode aired. But it was just an interesting, the fact that it was a lawyer struggling with this was interesting because I had just read The Best Minds.
One thing I found interesting in this episode is it does shine a little bit of a light as to why people might go off of their medication. If you're someone who has not had experience with people needing to take medication in order to be healthy and function in society, you might not understand why. You're like, why don't you take your medicine? Like, just do it. Like, I can take my allergy pills. Why can't you do this? And we hear from the character that he doesn't like to take his medicine because it makes him his very sharp brain. It makes it very slow, and that's it's unbearable for him to not be able to use his brain, which is this unique gift that he has. So
I will note that, and I have no idea if these are better for people. I have had no experience with them. There are now newer generations of antipsychotics that are designed to not have as onerous a side effect as the first generation that, did make people just feel like they could barely function. It basically shut down their brain, which got rid of the delusions, but also kind of got rid of everything else. And so it was really a hard thing to live with. There have been attempts to address that. I don't know how successful they have been. There's a scene at a New York pizza place in which two cops are sitting, or I think they're lawyers, are sitting at a New York pizza place, and they just have 2 small cups of water and nothing else. Absolutely, bizarre behavior.
They're only at the location for a quick amount of time. Again, to speak to the show, they're making a ton of episodes very quickly. And we talk about this a lot with shows that run like this, is that they're doing a ton on location in New York City, which is, listen, we lived in New York City. It's hard to live there, let alone trying to make a TV show there. This was filmed in studios at Chelsea Piers, but also on location in the city quite a bit.
Yeah, which, they still do with cop shows. When we lived in Williamsburg, Blue Bloods was constantly shutting down streets in our neighborhood. So there's still shows doing this.
Yes, so they're creating things very quickly again. So it's something you want to tip your hat to, just the prolific nature of this show. They're moneyed for sure. They have lots of financial support in order to make it happen. But they are making something that I think is good very quickly. Now, do I think it's good for society that this show exists? No. Do I think it was good for me as a 12-year-old to watch this in my parents' bed, hanging out with my mom at night? Yes, I do.
You think that was good for your mental point of view of the world?
No, absolutely not. But it was definitely good for the enjoyment of watching a television show where there's satisfaction of seeing things resolved and learning new things about the criminal justice system of Dick Wolf's mind.
This episode was written by Renee Bowser, who is a big procedural guy. His earliest credit is in 1990, a show called Nasty Boys, which is about...
Is that show about you?
I was like, I clicked on it because I was like, I have to read the plot of this one. And it's a special undercover police unit in North Las Vegas operates independently, answering only to their lieutenant and chief. When apprehending suspects, they conceal their identities with ninja-like outfits. Unfortunately, we cannot cover it here as it only lasted 14 episodes, so we cannot do a Nasty Boys episode.
Pour one out for Nasty Boys.
The other writer was Icy Rappaport, whose earliest credit is in 1972. He wrote a movie called To Kill a Clown, starring Alan Alda.
Yep. This episode was directed by Lewis Gould. A lot of courtroom stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of courtroom.
It's interesting looking at these people's credits and seeing how they develop in their career, because his first, if you like really go back and look in other credits, you start to see the shape of it. He started as a DGA trainee, uncredited on The Wiz, is his very first job. And then he did a lot of uncredited DGA trainee work, which seems like the kind of very helpful program that probably doesn't exist as much anymore, that you could just kind of be an uncredited trainee on stuff and learn how to do it. He worked his way up to second assistant director on a 1980 TV movie called Hard Hat and Legs, and then eventually to first assistant director on Chud in 1984, which was a New York sewers monster movie. And then finally got his first actual directing credits with Law & Order.
And did a lot of Law & Order. It seems like once you get into the Law & Order pipeline, if you do a good job, you get to stay there and you get to work on many of the other shows.
And you probably make enough money, because like he hasn't done much work since Law & Order, and it's probably one of these things. You make enough money.
It's syndicated. Like we're talking, going back to Renee Bowser, he was the showrunner for Law & Order for a while, won an Emmy, became a top 10 drama in the Nielsen ratings, then was syndicated to TNT, which when it was syndicated to TNT, it was the most expensive off-network series sale ever, receiving an unprecedented 5-season pickup from NBC. So they sold the show and then sold it again and then sold it again and sold it again. So
yeah, all these guys didn't need to work again after Law & Order. They were set.
How much is enough, you know?
I wrote down this question in my notes. Has anyone but a white man ever worked in writing or directing in Law & Order? And the answer is a few. And then also the first couple seasons of the show, it was only men who were on the show. So much so that I think it was either a network note or it was maybe even Dick Wolf himself. It was like, for $1, we need to name a woman on the show. And so they fired a couple of the actors and replaced them with a woman. And it was like a lot of the actors got really salty about it, and it just like was not handled well. And yeah, back to the controversy section. It was a big controversy. But then ultimately they did get some women on the show. There's the lieutenant, and then usually the assistant district attorney, the more junior district attorney, is played by a woman. Between this and Larry David being forced to add Elaine on Seinfeld by network executive, it does feel like in the early 90s, your job as a network executive was to be like, did you know women exist?
Did you know that we could also get a woman? Yeah, it's going to be weird because we're going to have to write around their pregnancies, but we'll just give them a big bag to put in front of them and it'll be fine.
It's just our research says that there's women watching TV for some reason, and so we do need to put one on screen. I know it's gross, but we do. Sorry, Larry David.
So, yeah.
So that was the best episode.
But secretly, we think that the best episode we watched was actually The Middleist, guys. So
yeah, spoiler alert: The Middleist was so much better than these other two.
We're talking over each other because The Middleist was really good. It was really good.
So actually, speaking of which, let's get to this. Thank you so much for listening. Check out our Patreon-only show, The Middleist, where we will be discussing the exact Middleist-rated episode to see what the show looks like when everything is exactly average. And that episode is Season 9, Episode 20, Empire, which features Julia Roberts at the height of her fame. Like full-on movie star Julia Roberts is in this one.
So good. She's so good in it.
And then we got to talk about what our next show we're going to watch is.
The next one we decided we're going to do MASH.
Yeah, mainly because my mom was like, you should do MASH. And we were like, okay.
Yeah. So we're going to do MASH.
I watched MASH as a kid.
I maybe saw an episode or two.
So this will be exciting. We're going to do MASH.
Finally, a show that Joseph's seen.
I saw X-Files. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Dun dun.
Thank you guys so much. Dun dun.
Uncovered windows can make your home feel up to 20 degrees hotter. Stay cool and save up to 45% off custom window treatments during the summer Black Friday mega sale at Blinds.com. From outdoor shades to room darkening blinds, finding the perfect fit is easy. Get free samples, expert design help, and professional measure and install services, or DIY with confidence and support every step of the way. Shop up to 45% off site-wide, plus huge savings on doorbusters right now during the summer Black Friday mega sale at Blinds.com.